Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for your kind comments and suggestions and ideas. This community is one that I appreciate deeply, and I just thank you for taking the time to do it. All right, so today, one of the questions I forgot to answer yesterday was about these that I had created and shared in a previous video, my first Create With Me. And I had talked about them briefly and how I use a formula a lot of times when I create embellishments and when I create a lot of things. And this is one of my formulas. And so a question I get fairly frequently is, what is your process? And most of the time, if I think about it, the things I make all the time, they have some kind of a formula to them. They may look different, and that's what I'm going to show you today. But they have a basic formula, and it's not a right formula, but it works for me. And so I'm sharing it with you so with the hope that you can build your own formula and find something that works for you that you can take and alter. Okay, so I had shared on this formula that the first thing I do is I get offcuts, and then I use whatever stamp I've got, and I either color it a solid image or I stamp it in different colors, like I did here with the pen markers, right? And then I'll maybe stamp a word or a date or something. And then I use some kind of a strip on the side. I'll ink, and then I used the Seth Apter Vintage Beeswax embossing powder. And then here just are, little itty bitty tiny scraps that most people would toss a fabric and lace and such, and I sew them on. And then, sometimes I'll put a little bit of washi or something there. So that is kind of a formula that I go to. But that's not the one that I go to the most often. This is just one of the formulas, and I have a couple, but here's where I'm going with this. All right, so when I create clusters or most of my embellishments for whatever it is that I'm embellishing, whether it's a card insert or a top of a bag or just a page corner embellishment or a tuck or a belly band or a fold down or whatever, I like to put embellishments on it. And most of the time, I'll start with just offcuts, right? Because most of the time I make them from scraps. And if you don't have any offcuts or you want to work with specific colors, you can make yourself some offcuts. So these are just offcuts, and this is an offcut and book page. And those are almost always my three fundamentals. Some kind of a cardstock, and sometimes it'll be bigger or narrower or what have you, but some kind of a sturdy paper, usually in a solid color, though not always, but usually in a solid color. Some type of old rescued book page, and then some type of pattern or a color. So I started making these as a sample for you to show you that I start with this, and most of the time I'll make the wider ones first. Here I tore the edges, and then I used this distress tool to rough them up a little bit, right? So I started with these pieces, the cardstock, and then I put a little bit of book page, a torn strip of book page right here. And then this is my pattern paper in this case. This is that grungy stuff that Gail and Tracy and Louise Heinzel did that's a lot of fun. And so I put that there. Okay, so I start with those pieces in some combination of order, but those three pieces. And then I almost always put one or two little like background pieces, tickets, labels. I use labels a lot. These are just the Tim Holtz tickets. These are blank Tracy labels. So that'll be my next section or step. And then I add like a little bit of lace and maybe a die cut or a piece of pre-printed ephemera. These are both the Tim Holtz snippets, I think they're called, embellishments, something like that. And then some kind of a label or a word or something. Now these both had, like this had a pale blue, I don't know, tie on it. It didn't work, so I put a little ribbon there with some twine. And then this one just needed to be grounded. And then I'll top them off. My final step is often with the Nouveau Deluxe Crystal Glaze. So that's how I start. And then I use these pieces that I tore to make some itty bitty, or the long and thin type clusters. But it's the same idea. There's a piece of cardstock, there's a piece of pattern paper, there's a piece of book page. Now when I add to this step, because it's a lot of times narrow or smaller, I'll add something that is textured. Like this is a glassine bag. a pastry bag. So a strip of that. So I'll add another piece to that, but then I do the same thing. I intentionally didn't sew on these so that if you're not a sewer, you can see that you can make them without sewing. Sorry about that glossy glare. But here almost always I sew on them I use a little itty bitty bits of lace and trim and that kind of a thing. And I almost always sew them on. And then some kind of an embellishment and then a tag of some sort. And then, these are obviously a little bit more grungy and they're set to my beloved Tracy Fox because they've got the bugs on them. But it's still the same idea. Pattern paper, cardstock, book page, kind of hiding under there. But you don't always have to use it. This one has print on it itself, so that might take the place of book page. A ticket, or 2 tickets in this place, or labels, and then some kind of a bug and a bit of lace and embellishment. So that uses up almost that entire strip when I'm using the I can't speak this morning, using the torn pieces to make these little thin clusters. Okay, so here is one look. And then one thing question I get or comment I get is, well, I don't use a grungy style. And that's okay because the formula works regardless of your style. And I made samples using a variety of things because though this is my favorite for junk journaling maybe, I do like other looks and styles. And you can see I did it here too. This is, I want to say it's graphic 45. Maybe it's a graphic 45 and it's the fairies one. I bought it because it has some daffodils in it. And you can see, same thing. I started with strips. I've got cardstock. I've got pattern paper and I've got the print. And then this was just, they have those little cut aparts. So this takes the place of a label, right? And then this is just one of those cut, or maybe this one's a full size, sticky back labels. I think I got them from Taperology. So I've got cardstock, pattern, book page, a label essentially, and then a label. And then I put a little bit of lace and then solid cardstock. And then for my embellishment, I just cut out another piece of the paper. And you can see I used some mounting foam, just a little bit of mounting foam, and gave it just a smidge of dimension. I like this one. I think I got this at Daiso simply because it's thin. I use 3M a lot, but just a little bit of mounting foam to give it some dimension. And then I again used the Nuvo Deluxe products on the top. And this I think is a stamp. And I added some brads. But the premise, the foundation is the same. Cardstock, pattern paper, book page, labels, a bit of lace or not, and a couple embellishments. So very, very different from the grungy look, but still it's the same idea. Here, this one, same thing, turned it sideways. I almost always distress with walnut stain, but you don't have to, and you don't have to distress at all. This one I used the archival black ink. So I distressed in black, and this one I didn't distress at all. But the formula, pattern, cardstock, book page, a label, a bit of lace, and some kind of embellishment. I put the brad on because this is also, again, raised. And this is a little bit thick too. So the 3-dimensional pieces there. And then again, a bit of a label. And there's no ink on that one. So same exact process, completely different product. And here, this card that cut apart that they gave you was pretty big. So my label's pretty big on this one, but it's still, I didn't use book page on this one. I guess I used the 2 sides of the pattern cardstock instead of book page. So here, you can see this one too. I flipped them over. So I substituted, and that's something, once you get comfortable with whatever products you like to incorporate, you can switch it around. Like here, I substituted a second piece of pattern paper for the book page, and I didn't use the book page. And then again, same idea, tickets, embellishment of some sort, and I just stapled. This has 2 of the butterfly vellum, not vellum, acetate or transparency stickers, and then I just glued one down and then stapled the other on top so that it would stay put and have motion. And again, this was started as a cluster and it just got big, or a strip cluster, got big because of the label that I put behind it, or the cut apart I put behind it. And here, cardstock, and rather than book page, I flipped over the cardstock, pattern cardstock, solid cardstock, label, a bit of, well, this isn't lace, this is some kind of a binding thing, but I like the color, and an embellishment. Now remember, a lot of times I've said that when I I've got these 3 pieces, but I often, when I do the long strip clusters, I add some kind of a texture. And I think this is just a piece of torn envelope, basically. So same concept, a little bit different look. And then I saw this in my blue or my yellow scrap bin. I had this paper that I'd promised myself. It's fabric covered paper that I'd use. And so I did, again, the same concept. And you'll see that, and I'm including these because you can see you get a really different look with each of the products depending on what kind of product you like to use or what look you like in your journals. So this is some of that torn, when I tear apart an old book and you get that little fray part from where you've torn apart the book, that's what that is. And then I used this in place of my book page because it's got print on it. So cardstock, pattern, book page, label, embellishment, and then there's mine. And then with this, once you've got it to this point, you can choose to add more or less if you want to, but that's up to you. And you can put it on anything. This is just a card front, I think. Yeah, you can put it here and make it into a tuck or an embellishment for a card or a part of a flip down or anything you want. Same idea here. I've got yellow and yellow, so maybe I would put another square of paper behind it or something. I don't know, something like that so that it stands out. But however you choose to mount it or adhere it, same idea. Pattern, book, cardstock. And then I didn't have anything that really went with this, so I just fussy cut a piece of that. And I had very little of this paper. It was just a leftover bit. And then a label. And in here, instead of using 2 labels, I used a tab. And then these, are these stamps? No, these are rub-ons. These are from the Tim Holtz rub-ons. And then I embossed the top with, not embossed, put the glaze on the top. All right. And then here's, again, the torn off pieces. When I tore it, same idea. And this added an extra bit. So pattern paper, I used the second pattern paper. So instead of a texture this time, because this fabric paper has a little bit of a texture. So pattern paper, cardstock book, some texture, label, and then again, I just fussy cut a piece because I didn't have anything else that really worked. And same idea here. You get a complete, I know what I was going to do. So if you wanted to, add for whatever, if you like it fairly simple, you can stop here. But if you want more, you can add a bit more, right? You can add it until it works for whatever it is you want. So again, completely different looks from the same process. All right, and I've got a couple more samples here and then I'll show you. And I'm a little nervous because guaranteed when you try to do it online, grabbing something and not having it planned out, it never turns out the way you expect, but there you go. All right, I used the same formula. I had some of this blue cardstock left, and rather than put it away, I just grabbed some other scraps. Book page, pattern paper, cardstock, image. This is one of those Taperology little things. A lot of us have these. And they have a whole bunch of different images. So if you like a little bit more color or a little bit more, not vintage, that's not the right word, retro, I guess. This is probably 30s or 40s or something along those lines. Whatever. So there's some great little images there. And that's what I did here. So my label was one of these little itty bitty images. And then again, another label. So 2 labels. And I have some of these dimensional flowers that I almost never use. And I really like them, but I rarely use them. So leftover bits from that, same idea, same process. Here, these are ticket, book page, cardstock, pattern paper, cardstock. I just changed the order a little bit. So I took the same concept and I used a little bit different size and a little bit different order. And this is just a pre-printed Tim Holtz flower, Tracy label, butterfly, and I think that was a stamp, a postage stamp. And then I put it on a card, and I'll cover that and put paper in there. But again, same concept. Oh, and you can't see it super well back here, but I have a bit of lace just to soften the edge of that. And so there's a bit of lace left over. And again, this was a little leftover bit of that blue cardstock, pattern paper, book page, a little bit of lace, label. This is a similar concept. It was a different kit, but label, and then some kind of an embellishment. Again, that was this. And so this is, it's not flat. I wouldn't say it's flat, but it's not super chunky. And then this, you know, maybe I'll just put it on here, or maybe I'll put this on here, and then, you know, it's just a little writing spot. Tuck it on there, tuck it in a journal, and you're good to go. Or you can use this as a card if you wanted to send it. All right, and then I had, because I was having fun playing with that, I had some singles. So, you know, just some one-offs. I had pulled this die cut out that I had decorated a while ago, and I did the same thing, cardstock, but instead of using a pattern paper, I used a larger ticket, one of those, I don't know, travel ticket things, and then book page. So I've got my 3 elements there, and then I made, here's my label at the bottom, and then I made my lace piece a little bit bigger. So it took the place of a label essentially, and added 2 different kinds of lace, and then put the die cut on the top, the decorated die cut. And that is just plain white die cut, colored the stem green, the flowers red, and then put Seth Apter Vintage Beeswax embossing powder on the top. And then you can use it as you want. And I didn't put anything more on it because, well, maybe I want to make it on a pocket out of this because it ties in that pattern paper. And there's my pattern paper if I want to add it. I can, you know, again, an insert or a booklet or a pocket or a tuck or a belly band or whatever. Or maybe I want to put it on a card, either to send or to include, and I don't want to focus on the green, I want to focus on that. So sometimes I'll keep them like this so that I know that, oh, I've got options with that. And here's just a one-off. This is from the way back in January. I had mentioned that Tracy and I did a swap. And, wow, that was fun. And she sent me these incredible mill ends. And I didn't throw away any of it once I sewed it on because I freaking love it. So I used that little itty bitty bit. So that's acting as my label or texture. So here, solid piece of cardstock, but I've got print and I have pattern. So instead of using 2 different pieces, I used 1 piece, but I still got my print and I've still got my solid. And then these are my acting labels, my bit of lace, my label, and my embellishment. And, you know, made a journaling tag insert. So totally different look, but a very, from the similar or same concept. Here, completely different. And I'm showing a variety of things to show you that no matter what it is you have and what it is you use, if once you find a formula that works for you, you can make it work regardless of the product. All right, pattern paper that happens to be cardstock, so it kind of takes 2 rolls, right? And then book page, a label, and this is cut from that paper, and a couple embellishments. And then this one had some rub-ons that were really cool, so I put the rub-on there to create visual texture. And this is that more of that white frayed edge paper. So I've got the paper there as well. So pattern paper, it's not really cardstock, it's a texture paper. Book page, tickets are embellishments and embellishments. And, you know, same formula, very, very different look. And then I know some of you guys really like the Victorian vintagey look. And I very rarely do that, even though I think it's beautiful. So I pulled out book page, and then my cardstock is here because I don't know what I want it to go on yet. And then my ticket act as my pattern paper. This, you know, longer ticket is my pattern paper. And then my embellishment was the picture, and that's like a label almost because it's, you know, it's the Tim Holtz stuff, so it's kind of thicker. And then here is an embellishment, and here is my label. Same concept with the 2, just a very, very different look. And then what I can do, if I'm going to, depending on how I want to use this, maybe I'll mat it on this and trim it down and put it on a page. But honestly, what I'll probably do is put it on a cover. And maybe I'll use some of this, you know, really pretty, more Victorian-ish paper and mount it on this and then make a booklet or something. Or I can even, you know, mat this here, trim this down and mat this and sew this on. And this is just a piece of canvas that I've coffee dyed, and make a journal cover, because I don't often put things that are quite this dimensional. I want to say these are $49 in Market 3D embellishments, and it's pretty darn chunky, but I would absolutely trim this down, sew this on, and make this a cover of a journal. And, you know, so basically whatever your process is, if you have a formula and you're kind of stuck for what to do, or you're still learning, this is a great way to go. And I'll show you real quickly my process. Now, I grabbed a bunch of different things, so I don't have a plan in place for this. So if it's an epic fail, I apologize. But I was looking at my tray and I just grabbed some things from my tray. All right, so I'm going to start with my offcut, right? And do I like these colors together? I kind of like these together. This is a piece of torn piano roll paper. And this is just a 6x6 piece. So, oh, and there's lines on the back. So that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll use that for the back of something. All right, just a little tip. When you tear, you can use a tear ruler, of course, but a lot of times I'll tear it by hand. And much of our paper, if you can see there, it has a white core, especially printed paper. If you want the white core to show, the edge to show, whatever you tear towards you will have a little bit of white edge. Whatever you don't here, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to tear this towards me. I use finger, finger, thumb, thumb most of the time. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So when I'm tearing towards me, right? So I've got my little white edge here on the left. So what I want with no white edge is on the top. So as I'm tearing towards me. Now this one has the white edge on top. So do you see the difference there if I were to ink that or not ink that? If I inked it, the white edge wouldn't show. But depending on what you want, tear accordingly and play with a little bit with, some itty bitty scraps that you might have. All right, so I created the torn edge and I will definitely ink it because I prefer an inked torn edge. And I was going to start with a rectangle, and it doesn't matter if you start with a rectangle or if you start with just your long strips. I just often will start with those offcuts because I have a lot of them, and I'll make one and then I'll make a strip one afterwards. So I guess maybe I should do that here. So I'll just put that aside and I'll make that strip one. And then here is this long one. And maybe you don't want to tear, maybe you want to cut it. So let's just cut a piece here. All right. And I like the way this is, I think this is Italian paper. Maybe it's got, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a real pretty yellow with fleckles in it. And I really like that. So maybe this was my rectangle piece originally. So I'm going to tear this down. Okay. And this is a little wider than I normally make it, this piece, but these two pieces, but that's okay. And then I ink them before I edge them, before I glue them down. But it's not a required step. I just like a little bit of, I don't like the white to show through. So I'll ink it. Okay, and then I'm gonna glue these together. But you know what? Yeah, I am gonna do it. Like I said, I didn't have a plan, so I don't know how well this will work. I just grabbed random pieces like, oh, this color works. Oh, this color works. And it was literally that detailed. One of the things I often do is I almost never match up the edges. I always want them to be just a little bit offset. And I don't know if that's just a personal thing or what. Let's see, where do I want this piano paper? I like the little holes in the piano paper. That's what gives it its personality. So maybe I will cut this down and put it on top. Another thing that I do when I'm doing this is I don't glue the whole thing. I don't glue from end to end, edge to edge. That way, if I want to tuck something a little bit later, I have tuck room. Like if I want to tuck something like here you go, under the edge, right? And actually, I like that tucked under the edge, so I am going to trim this down a smidge more to make it a little bit narrower. And I'll save this piece because that would work, for texture, that would work really well on a different item. And again, I like the inked edges. I don't put a lot on usually, but sometimes I do. All right, and I liked the way that looked tucked under here. And I want the yellow to show. Yeah, I kind of like that. All right. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of glue on because most of the time I sew on these. Not always, you don't have to, but most of the time I do. So I know that it's going to be held down when I sew on it. And if I need to come back later on, I can easily come back in with this fine tip and tuck some glue in. All right, so there is my pattern. There is, now I need my book page. Okay, and let's see, what kind of book page do I have here? This looks like a definition type journal. And how do I want that to go? I think I want the torn edge on this side, and I want it to be a fine torn edge. Now this one, because it's not, there's no color in the middle, it doesn't really matter which way you tear. But I like that. And do I want a solid edge or a torn edge? Well, let's go like this. I want it kind of narrow. Maybe I want it a little bit more narrow. No, I kind of like that. Yeah, I like that. So this would act as my cardstock, even though it's not cardstocked, my pattern paper, my texture paper, and then my book page. I don't always add the texture paper, especially when I'm doing the more wide rectangle ones, but I like the way it looks here. And that's what I mean by, you know, being able to, or wanting to, willing to, I guess is a better way to put it, alter your formula just a little bit, but start with a basic plan. Okay, I'm going to put that right there. All right, so there I've got the basis of my cluster, right? And most of the time when I do these, I'll make a whole bunch of these and then I'll come back and sew. I had some more different things here, different options. Like I said, I just pulled out a bunch of things. All right, and now if I were going to sew something, I usually sew the bit of lace and yeah, just a bit of lace and whatever sewing I'm going to do on here. But on this one, I'm not going to. And I had this little itty bitty cluster from just the scrap bin. It was, pulled it out just because the colors were right. And I really like this flower. And I like that. I'd be okay with that. Let's see if I'm even in frame. But I want something just a little bit different or a little bit more. Now, sometimes instead of using book page, I'll use a vocabulary card. And thank you, JS. These are really, really awesome vocabulary cards. So thank you. But I've got book page on here and I don't need the double, and this is big, so I'll put that aside. Also, I had this little coffee die cut. And I like the coffee. You know what? I could go with a completely different look. Here you go. Okay. Let's say I wanted to make this, you know, a little bit not vintagey, no lace, right? I've got some coffee cards here, or some cigarette cards, or what's the other one? Tea cards. That's it. Here, let me see what I've got. Oh, okay, that's good. I like that. So I've got this cigarette tea card, what have you, and I like that daisies are the friendliest flower, so I'll put those there. And then this is just one of those pre-printed labels, and so I will combine this. I'll put this here, and then a label, and then my die cut, right? And let's see, can you see that? I'll zoom in just a little bit. And then I would assemble it something like, maybe like, no, I like it better that way. See, like I said, I didn't have this planned in advance, so I just kind of grabbed things. But you can see I like the little bit of text showing there, so maybe I would do that. And then I like, the bottom is fine and all, but I don't really need it. And I want some of the texture to show on the bottom. And then I would put a die cut like this, overlap it a little bit, and there you go. So if I wanted, there would be my cluster. I could add a date label to it, but I don't know that I really need to because I've got a label here and I've got this acts as a label. But if I want to go in a completely different direction, maybe I'll use this same circle piece and I'll put this lace here, right? And I don't know that I love that because it's round and round, but I actually kind of do like it. So I would sew this bit down on here and then put my flower on top, and I have a cluster, completely different look, same basic background. So if you've got some backgrounds done, you can take it in pretty much any direction you want using the products that you have. You don't have to, you know, necessarily go out and buy something specific for it. All right, and that is my formula. Please, I encourage you to play with it and alter it a little bit and make it your formula, make it work for you. And that is embellishments by formula. Okay, a couple things I forgot in my previous video. I'm going to go over them super quick. Somebody asked me what stamps I used in the first Create With Me, and these I got at a yard sale. They're 2007 Stampin' Up, and these are, I don't know if I got the other pieces or not, because usually they came in sets of 4, but these are those outline type flowers. Okay, no idea where they're available. Somebody else asked about die cuts, and most of the time I just have a little bin of die cuts that I cut, you know, just my offcuts of white. This is a Tim Holtz Sussex die, Wildflowers, I believe is the one. And I have a bunch in here, and when I get in the mood, I will pull out some ink pens or Tim Holtz ink, and then I'll color them and I'll emboss them, or I'll do them in solid colors, right? I'll just do that when I'm in the mood to play. And then some of them are from Carrie at Which Craft Do You Do. She has a laser cutter, and she's got really awesome laser wildflower pieces. And so some of them are from that. And they all just kind of, well, now they really messily live in this bin. They lay flatter once I put them in. But so when you're seeing the die cuts, that's what they are. They're almost all either Simon Says Stamp, Tim Holtz Sussex, or Carrie from Which Craft Do You Do. And that's the die cuts. Deb Hale, sweet Deb, sent me this a while ago, and it was in the wrong bin, and I found it yesterday when I was looking for scraps. So Deb, thank you, thank you, thank you. I had mentioned a while ago, my friend Lisa had given me this paper. It's thin, it's kind of a little bit thicker than copy paper, but it's absolutely not cardstock. And it's a dark green on one side, and it's the craft on the other. And I have not been able to find it. I've looked at probably 24 different sites. But Deb was so kind, and she found the craft in green. She found one from Echo Park with the green and brown. And it's not the craft, but it's a really cool, and it's a thicker, definitely a thicker weight. And then this one is a lighter green with a brown craft. And again, same idea, a little bit different shade, but thicker weight and beautiful. And then this one is a much thicker weight. So, and it's got a texture to it. So thank you, Deb, for that. I finally found them, and I love them, and I really appreciate it. But I still haven't found, this is almost like a grocery bag. That's almost exactly what the weight is. So if you're at a grocery store paper bag, the brown on the back, it just happens to be green on the front instead. Love that stuff. But I love these as well. So thank you very much for your kindness there. All right. I had meant to mention Debbie from Kip's Corners, and she's got a YouTube channel, and I will link it below. And I bought a journal from her last year, and she does incredible, beautiful work. Well done, well made, finally finished, I guess, well thought out. The pages that she uses are a nice quality variety of papers, just a soft touch of embellishments. She adds a bit of mixed media in some areas, like here you can see the start of the signature is kind of a mixed media effect. That looks probably like it was dyed of some sort. She'll stamp a little bit. Beautiful job. She's got some great ideas, fabulous tutorials, cool bug. Love it because it makes me think of my Tracy. You know, simple. I'm sure she probably has a formula that she uses for clusters as well. But just really, really well done. And this is more mixed, even adding more mixed media. She shares the process of how she creates some of these things, and same thing with the cover. So she had mentioned on a previous video that she's trying to up her subscription rate. So please, if you've got a free minute, or you want to be inspired or learn from somebody who's very gifted, go check out Debbie's channel at Kip's Corner. All right. What else did I forget? Oh, ink boxes. Okay, so yesterday didn't go as planned. I had meant to list these yesterday, but I got them listed this morning. And I have 2 different varieties. I think there are 11 total listed in there. I've got 5 or 6 that are stained and 5 or 6 that are painted. And they're all of this with the same formula. So you can see, you can use 2 3-inch square ink pads if you choose to, or you can put in, it's over here, a 4-inch ink pad, I guess. All right, see, so you can put the 4-inch ink pad in as well. So you get to pick. They work either way, which is why I did them like this, so that you could choose. Now, some of them Where did the lid come from? Oh, there we go. Some of them are snugger than the other, but I checked every single one and they all fit. Like you can see, that's pretty snug, but it holds it nice and tight. So those are listed, and then I've got, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that more cut. And they take a couple days to assemble. So I will list those as soon as I can, basically, within the next few days. So some are listed now if you're interested. My Etsy shop is linked below in the description box. So there's that. And then finally, somebody had mentioned that, and I didn't pay attention because I'm not great at that, that I'm at 20,000 subscribers, which is mind-blowing. So if you would like, what I will do is those pieces that I shared today. I don't have anything in mind for them. I was just playing. So the pieces that I shared today, let's see. You know what? I will, however many pieces I've got, and I have no idea, I will randomly pick people and send it to you. And if you've purchased from my Etsy shop before, I'll have your address, so that's awesome. And if you haven't, that's fine. I'll just send you a message and try to get your address. So I will mail these out. Let's see, today is the 23rd or the 24th, a week. Today is a Wednesday, so a week from today, I will look at all the comments and I will just randomly, I'll probably have Tim do it because that's generally how I do it, or maybe get a random comment picker, whatever. I will send you one of these pieces that I made. If you have a specific preference, like, oh, Corey, I'd really, really like the red one. Well, I can't guarantee it because maybe everybody likes the red one, or maybe nobody likes the red one. I don't know. So if you have like, oh, Corey, I could really use the blue and yellow, or the vintage blue and yellow, or purple. I love purple and I'd like a purple one. Go ahead and put that in there. And if I have one available, I will honor that. Oh, Corey, I really like the grunge. So, or I would rather have a grunge. Just put that in there and I will try to honor that whenever possible. I deliberately didn't put people on here because that seems to be the thing that some people love and some people don't. So I will give away all these bits that I made for the sample. Just leave a comment. All right, thank you as always for watching. My next video, unless I scroll, is going to be the start of the One Sheet Wonders because I have started that process as well. So that is truly coming soon. I said the end of August, and I might actually make it by the end of August, or at least started on it. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching and happy creating.